Or, God's greatest gift is His Son. In a world of ungrace, took the only perfect person who ever lived and murdered him as a common criminal. Yet, God even transformed that horror into a sign of His grace. For God so loved the world that He gave His only Son to die. God took the worst thing that could happen in human history, the murder of God's own Son, and He turned it into a day we now call Good Friday. That's grace. In the cross of Jesus, God declared a ceasefire with the human race. I will bear the pain, God said. I will do this thing in order to get my family back. Christians have not always perfectly demonstrated that kind of grace, as we've been discussing throughout this series. Often we're tempted to rely on the same powers that the rest of the world relies on. Voting blocks, shouting, revenge, anger, violent force. But the most powerful force that any of us can ever show is the same force that Jesus showed, sacrificial love. Jesus never expected those people who followed Him to perfect the world. In fact, think of the images that Jesus used to describe the kingdom of God. It was not like other kingdoms with an army and fortified borders. It works invisibly, crossing borders, infiltrating, transforming from the inside out. The kingdom is like a sprinkling of salt on meat, Jesus said. You don't need a bucket full of salt to preserve a pound of meat. A mere sprinkling will do. He said God's kingdom is like a bit of yeast in bread. Again, you don't need a pound of yeast in a pound of bread. Just a tiny bit will cause the whole loaf to rise. The kingdom is like the smallest seed in the garden, but if you plant it, it'll sprout. It will grow into a great tree, so lush and shady that the birds of the air come and nest in its branches. That's how the kingdom of God works, Jesus says. That's how the church works. We are called to demonstrate sacrificial love to the world, to dispense God's grace. But the world doesn't deserve it, you might say. And that's the point of grace. No one deserves it. It's free of charge. A gift of God. A counterforce against revenge and violence and evil.